Hello folks, Imaxination 1980 here with another animation ramble. Now I'm going to be talking about Real Effects Creative Studios, or should I really say Real Effects Animation Studios. Now to me, even though this studio has been around for a long time, I think they really legitimately entered the feature animation playing field with 2013's Freebirds, though before that they had done animation work for mainstream releases like Everyone's Hero and a lot of direct-to-video films. Like they had done the open season sequels, and they had also done things like, they had also done some short films. They had done some of the DreamWorks short films like The Secrets of the Furious 5. They even did short films for Blue Sky and Illumination Productions. They did a couple of those CGI Looney Tunes shorts. So they have a history, but I believe that their first true animated movie was Freebirds in 2013, and then a year later they released The Book of Life, which was Jorge Gutierrez's personal pet project, his Day of the Dead film. And this year, Rock Dog is being released. Now, Rock Dog, it is a Real Effects film, but Real Effects did it as contract work. It's really a Mandu production, Hui Brothers. It was really a Chinese production that they contracted Real Effects to do the animation for. Real Effects will also be doing the animation for the upcoming Warner Animation Group film Scoob. So, Real Effects doubles as a studio that does their own work, but also does contract work for other companies, which I think is very, very interesting. We're starting to see that more lately. I mean, with Warner Animation Group, you had Storks, which was done up at Sony Pictures Imageworks, and Sony Pictures Animation is one of the main players in, you know, the animation industry, and I think Sony Pictures Imageworks also had a hand in the Angry Birds movie, though I think most of the animation in that movie was done by Rovio. Anyways, as for upcoming Real Effects productions, I already talked about Wish Police, so now I'm going to talk about the other things that are in development. There is Jorge Gutierrez's Untitled Kung Fu Space Western. There's concept art out for that thing, and it looks epic. It looks a lot like The Book of Life, and one of the things I loved so much about The Book of Life was that it threw a rock at the glass. I'm going to be upfront with you guys. My problem with a lot of computer animation these days is that it tries so hard to look so real, all the while feeling real and still retaining that kind of cartoony look. I mean, they're like mere steps away from being photograph movies. They might as well do them in live action. And even though I admire the staggering work that goes into those movies, I think to myself, well, we're getting away from what animation, you know, can be. I'm not saying it's going away from it. Now, to be fair, traditional animation thrives on television and in short films and also across the seas. You know, Europe and Japan, they make all these great 2D animated films that really show the potential that the medium has, but most American computer animation all goes for that sort of, you know, and I don't want to say this is a generalization. I don't want to say this because this is kind of a generalization, but they're all basically trying to refine the look that we first saw in Toy Story. They're trying to make that quasi-live action, you know, it looks just like real life, but still has that cartoony element about it. It's in everything. The Pixar films, the Disney animated films, Illumination's films, some are cartoonier than others. Like if you look at things like Sony's Hotel Transylvania and DreamWorks Madagascar, there are films that push the character design and the movements, and they're a lot cartoonier. But there are things that are a lot closer in terms of their movements and in terms of their staging. They're a lot closer to live action. And honestly, I'm just getting kind of bored of this overall look in CGI. I'm just getting really, really bored of it. And The Book of Life was like a wrench in the gears. It really just, it looked like concept artwork, but come to life. I loved the look of it. It was just so visually inventive, and it was very colorful, and it just had this, it just had wonderful art direction. And it looks like Jorge Gutierrez's Untitled Kung Fu Space Western movie is going to be just that too. And I just love that it's going to be a cross-genre movie. It's going to combine all these kinds of, this is something new for animation, you know, this isn't a comedy, you know, about, you know, this isn't some adventure comedy, you know, this isn't some run-of-the-mill animated adventure. This is something that looks to be pretty cool, you know, something that looks to, you know, shake things up a bit, shake up the animation snow globe per se. I am really looking forward to it, even if we may know very little about it. Again, it's going to be basically The Book of Life 2.0. It's just going to be this very visually lavish movie that really shows what you could do with CGI. You know, you don't always have to do the photoreal, you know, movie. You don't have to make something that tries to look like real life. You know, realism and photorealism, it isn't everything. And, you know, we've seen this a lot of times in animation. You know, in the 1950s, you had studios like the UPA, and they really went against the grain. They made these very minimalist short films. They made these very minimalist cartoons that challenged the naturalism of Disney's films and also the look of most Hollywood cartoons at the time. They were real outliers, and unfortunately their style was kind of appropriated per se when television animation came about. It was kind of ruined. They took that minimalist style and they changed it to limited budget animation. Except those cartoons, they were not charming like the UPA ones were. They were not innovative like the UPA cartoons were. The UPA used minimalism to their advantage, whereas most of the Saturday morning cartoons, they were just using it to get by, you know, to produce hours of programming and to earn their money back. Whereas the UPA, they used minimalism, you know, to their advantage. They used it to do something really cool, and I want to see more of that in CGI. If traditional animation can't come back to American feature animation, then they might as well do cool things with CGI, and that's what I loved about The Book of Life. The Book of Life was not a great movie by any stretch. I think it was very good, but it needed some tweaking, and a much less frantic second half, for starters, but on the whole it was good. But visually, it was like a real shot. It was like a turbo shot in the CGI coffee. Again, I'm not trying to put down the work of other studios. That's a lot of work, you know, to get that realism and to keep that feel at the same time. That's a lot of work. I'm not denying that. I'm just saying, I'm bored of this being the norm. I'm sick of the quasi-live action look. I'm sick of it trying to look so realistic. You know, every single detail and everything looks just like real life, but not really, sort of, kinda. I want to see more movies that look like paintings come to life, you know, that look like things come to life, and that's what excited me so much about The Book of Life, and that's one of the things that excites me so much about Untitled Kung Fu Space Western. That and it being a Jorge Gutierrez film, and also because it's a cross-genre film. Another film that Real Effects has had in development for a while is Beasts of Burden. Now, I don't know if this is moving forward at all. Like, I don't know if it's really, like, going anywhere. It's a comic book series. It's about animals that go and investigate all these paranormal things. I'm actually reading from the Wikipedia page. That's how freaking lazy I am. Basically, it says that they're a team of animals that investigate different paranormal events that occur in their small neighborhood of Burden Hill. It's dogs and a cat, and there's all this really cool stuff. I've never really read the series, but it's basically talking animals meets the supernatural and the scary. And I think that this would be a great alternative to talking animal comedies, you know, like Secret Life of Pets and movies that are like funny animal movies like that. It's like, here's a movie about pets investigating ghosts and, you know, monsters and demons. And supposedly this graphic novel series is not very kid-friendly. Apparently, if it were to be adapted properly, it would make for a PG-13 rated animated movie. And out of most of the animation studios, I think Real Effects can easily, you know, transition to making a more adult-oriented animated feature, but not a stupid one, not a shallow one. It's supposed to be directed, I believe. Now, back when it was announced, they said that Andrew Adamson of the first two Shreks and the first Narnia movie, he was supposed to produce it, and that Shane Acker, who was the director of the film 9, he was supposed to be the director of the movie. We haven't heard anything since, but apparently it's still on Real Effects' docket. Hopefully, it ends up becoming a thing, because a PG-13 animated Beasts of Burden movie sounds like it could shake things up a bit. Again, like Book of Life and Kung Fu Western, it seems like one of those shake-up-the-pot kind of things. Another project is called Giant Girl, which was pitched by Real Effects story leads Bob Logan and Paul Fisher. Not much is really known about this one, so I'm guessing that it's an original story, which wouldn't surprise me because Real Effects so far, outside of Rock Dog and Scoob, have done original stories. Freebirds, whether you like it or not, was not based on anything, not on any pre-existing source material, and there was also, and you know, The Book of Life was also an original story too. It was Jorge Gutierrez's personal pet project. So Giant Girl looks to be another original, and I guess it is what it says on the tin. It's about a giant girl. Interesting. Even though Disney Animation's already making a Jack and the Beanstalk adaptation where Jack teams up with a lost giant girl to help her get back home. Yeah, interesting. You know, sometimes, you know, the great minds, they think alike. And then lastly, Monster on the Hill. Now, Monster on the Hill is a book series, and It was written by Rob Harrell, who created the comic strip Big Top. And I'm reading from the Amazon description because, again, I know very little about this. It says, in a fantastical 1860s England, every quiet little township is terrorized by a ferocious monster, much to the townsfolk's delight. Now, that's kind of an interesting twist. Each town's unique monster is a source of local pride, not to mention tourism. Each town, that is, except for one. Unfortunately, for the people of Stoker-on-Avon, their monster isn't quite as impressive. In fact, he's a little down in the dumps. Can the morose Rayburn get a monstrous makeover and become a proper horror? It's up to the eccentric Dr. Charles Wilkie and plucky street urchin Timothy to get him up to snuff before a greater threat turns the whole town to kindling. So it sounds like a pretty creative premise, and again, something that really is not a Real Effects' wheelhouse. Again, this is a studio I think that we should keep an eye on, because of how good the Book of Life was and how interesting that was visually, and because of what they have on their docket, it sounds like they have these really creative, very off-kilter projects in the works, and ones that I think are above and beyond some of the safe projects that some of the mainstream studios are doing. I mean, look at DreamWorks' current lineup right now, Boss Baby, Trolls, things like that. I'm not saying that DreamWorks plays it safe, but I think right now they've been playing it kind of safe. Illumination with movies like The Secret Life of Pets, and Sony Animation with Smurfs and Emoji, and those kinds of things. And it's kind of cool to see this small little studio based in Dallas kind of, making waves and sort of promising these big things. Now, if they'll come to fruition, who knows? There were similar studios like them that promised big things but never really got to doing them. But I don't think this is in store for Real Effects, because Real Effects actually made one of these promising movies. And again, that was The Book of Life. Of course, we can't measure Rock Dog or Scoob against them, regardless of how they turn out, because Rock Dog and Scoob are productions they simply did the animation work for. They were not projects conceived within the walls at Real Effects. Again, Rock Dog is a Chinese production, and Scoob is a Warner Animation Group commissioned project. So I'm simply referring to the films that Real Effects themselves are cooking up, and all of them sound very, very promising. Again, keep an eye out for this studio. They may just shock us.